Hi and welcome to 3D Print Tech Design. My name is Anton Monson and this is my full review of the Weedo X40 Dual IDEX Extruder 3D printer. Let's get started! Before we go too far, I'd like to mention that this is a Kickstarter pre-production machine, so there's some risk involved if you're backing, like ordering this machine via Kickstarter. At least for right now, and yeah, some of the negative things or the positive things that I say might change when you actually get the machine. And if you are interested in skipping ahead to different steps, you can check out the description down below or in the player bar. You can see different chapters, and if you quickly want to scrabble through this video, you can do all that right there. Alright, so what is an IDEX 3D printer and why should you care? Well, IDEX stands for Individual Dual Extruders, which basically means that one of these extruders can move along its own axis. So in this case, the x-axis is separated with two extruders, so both of them can move independently. In theory, this means much less contamination between the two colors, but also for cool features like duplication mode or mirror mode. It's also much easier to print two different types of materials when you have two different hot ends that can do different temperatures and stuff like that. Let's check out some of the specs of the Weedo X40 3D printer. Build size, it has 300 by 300 and 400 mm tall. With duplication mode, that's around 145 mm by 300 by 400. And with mirror, it's 120 by 300 by 400 mm. It uses dual 0.4 mm nozzles by standard with 1.75 mm Bowden extruders that both have filament runout sensors. It has a removable heat bed that can flex a little bit, and auto bed leveling with a probe and mesh mapping. You get LAN printer surveillance with the built-in camera and the Wi-Fi. You also have auto power off after printing, and you have resume print after power out, as well as self-testing before prints. So basically it's testing all its sensors. The machine uses a STM32 32-bit motherboard running on a 24-volt power system, as well as TMC2208 drivers. For software, you can run Cura or the provided Rebuilder software that we will be focusing on mostly. Alright, so for my review, I think it's important to go through what I expect from IDEX machine. That is like the ultimate selling point of this machine. So for example, I expect to get some good support for the dual extrusion in the software. I expect to be able to control the machine for two extruders. There are particularly a few things that I consider important for IDEX machine, and these we will go through in the review. Two-color 3D print in the same material. Mixing different materials, using PVA material as support material, duplicating and mirroring prints, the calibration of the printer extruders, smart wiping and pre-extrusion code, and how you can adjust the dual extrusion settings. Alright, so with the criteria set, I think it's important that we start with the main selling point of the machine, of course, the dual extrusion. The dual extrusion right out of the box is very nice. You get crisp colors, you get little to none contamination between the two extruders, as you can see in many of these examples. The hardware works really good. You have strong brushes that keeps the nozzles clean when they go in and out during a material swap. They are a bit rough though, and on my machine that got delivered, I did not have anything to collect the filament that it purges on each extruder swap. The thing is that when they purge, it got pretty messy. There were no containers on my machine to collect the purge. You can see here it's a big mess. That's easy to fix. I actually got the files to print them, but I never had the time to do that before this review. With your machine, you should get those on. The nozzles, the two nozzles are perfectly calibrated, at least from my machine, out of the box. It means that the two nozzles otherwise might be on different levels, maybe on different distance than what the software thinks. In my case, the precision of the one extruder over the other one was perfect. That's really nice. If the nozzles get a little bit off, there is a script that you can run on the machine, and it will help you print some files and calibrate and choose which ones are better, and thereby calibrating your machine. Mixing materials is pretty easy, and it works good with like the standard, normal, easy types of materials. When you want to start mixing more complicated materials, like for say TPU and PLA, you start to run in some issues within the software and within the Rebuilder software. There is a Cura version for Mac, and I'm sure there will be one for Windows as well, but I only have Windows, so I have only been able to run the machine with the Rebuilder software, which is probably the reason I'm gonna hack a little bit on that software. The thing is that if you want to set up your own Cura profile, there's a lot of different commands for swapping the tool heads, which is a little bit more complicated than just building your own profile. So that's why I'm waiting for an official one from Weedo. So some of the things that I really miss being able to change when I'm doing two different materials, for example soft and hard, is the ability to change things like retraction, flow, or individual settings for each nozzle. You're more or less stuck to some of the settings for each individual nozzle. You can change like the whole machine's performance and the whole print's settings, but for each individual nozzle you can't do much more than nozzle tuning, so like the nozzle size and temperatures, which is a bit weird. But this makes it really hard to be able to do fine adjustments for any kinds of material. Like if you want to have some support settings only for the right extruder but not for the left, if you want to have retractions, flow, temperatures, maybe even line widths or minimum line widths, you can change that per extruder, which is a bit annoying. So for example, there's a lot of adjustments that you might want to do or you even need to do to be able to get a good dual extrusion print with, for example, PVA supports. Or TPU shells with hard infill. I was doing some prints and it worked out, but you're limited to what you can control. The good news is that all of this are software limitation, which means that hopefully by the release of the machine or shortly after, all of that will be taken care of with Cura profiles and other updates that makes the Weedo software actually handle these kind of settings. And I guess that is one of the main difference between a budget IDEX machine and one of the more professional ones, is that you don't get the luxury of like Ultimaker, Race 3D, BCN 3D material profiles and like those settings combination. On the other hand, you're not paying for it either. So if you're up to when the software gets a little bit better, you can do a lot of good stuff with this machine that is basically the same hardware as one of the more expensive ones, but not the same software. So with that said, I was using mostly filamentive PLA in combination with Form Fortura PVA. I had some decent PVA prints, but PVA by nature doesn't stick very well on top of PLA. It's really good to like keep support underneath, but when you do want to do stuff above, it's very difficult to get the PVA to actually stick on the PLA. You can do it, but you need to fine-tune settings, which I can't do. I can only change the settings for both materials, which will lead to really weird print times and really weird features of the both materials. I don't want that. I only want to do things to the PVA material. So if we look at this exhaust manifold test print that I was doing, you can see it was really difficult because I was using the PVA supports inside the model as well. A standard scenario of using solvable supports. Since there is a lot of micro issues sticking to the PLA in mid-print, the finish inside and around the model is fairly flawed by micro contamination and other pieces that flew around during printing. You can also see how the prime tower failed here, only working with the PLA, not the PVA. That's also leaving all this snot and filament poop all over the build plate. But yeah, it still works. So when we take this model off the build plate, it's not finished because we have PVA supports. Even if you break some away, the goal is that you should break as much as possible away and then you solve the rest. Because it does take some time to properly solve everything. As you can see in this time lapse, the initial dissolving is very quick, but there are some left inside of the pipes, which with better stream around or washing it or going in every now and then and actually stirring around the water will help with that. But always try to remove as much as possible. And yeah, looking at the results, it's definitely okay. It's not perfect, but I think it's pretty good. So yes, one of the issues with PVA is that you have to keep it super dry, like really crisp for it to work correctly. And again, sticking to PLA is very difficult. But sticking from the build plate was working super nice and I really had some great success with that. But again, suspending a model like completely in PVA, let's say trying to mimic a SLS print like that uses powder, that's not really possible right now. And I think that that's not really what you're going to be able to do with the PVA, PLA combinations or other material for that matter. So PVA needs some more controls, but it works for like a lot of the cases. It's a little bit difficult. Again, with better software options, you should be able to achieve equal performance like BCN 3D or Ultimaker or Race 3D, but there's going to be a longer road of fine-tuning and getting that to work for probably each individual. In my case, I might be able to do some profiles, do some testing and share that with you, so make sure you subscribe for that. But for now, I'm waiting for software updates before we can even start to fine-tune that. So speaking of software with the dual extrusion, the software also needs some fine-tuning. Especially the first firmware I was using. I was actually swapping to another one at the end of the review period. But the first one had some issues like controlling the swaps. There were some issues with how like the motions of the swaps were a bit rough. The machine often hit these oozing shields that they want you to use. You don't have to, but you can use them. And sometimes they were like too rough. The oozing isn't really like oozing, it's more like wiping on the wall, which is a bit rough, and sometimes this gets thrown off the build plate and your model doesn't stick anymore. And again, on software, there's a lot of different points that I want to point out that are hopefully only like notes for the manufacturer to improve, but these are what I found in my review, and I think it's important that I highlight them to you because I think that the price and the IDEX system and the great hardware will get you like, oh, I want to get this machine. But there are some software limitations that kind of need some work. And I believe that they will do that. So here are a few examples that explain some of the software bugs or features or dislikes that I had about the software. First off, the C-hop doesn't seem to work as intended with some of the slicer's features. When the machine moves into the print again, it collides with the print or the prime tower like it was an ooze shield. This seems to have been fixed in the later firmware that I got, but I can't really tell. Even the ooze shield that you're recommended to use, even though we have wipers and pre-extrusion on the side, it seems to be a bit violent. And I had the stepper motors actually skip steps trying to move in over the print again. So basically stopping the whole print. This doesn't happen all the time, and I suspect it's a matter of what features are ticked in the slice and the travel speeds for those features. I only had this in 1 or even 2 prints. There are some other features with the C offset from the probe and the actual meshing that is a bit annoying as well. It doesn't really seem to work as expected. For example, the mesh leveling really only works with raft. So if you don't use raft, it's just a C probe. But that probe was set too far away for a good level to start with. So even if you have the C offset that you can try to calibrate that, it doesn't seem to be able to use that. So the leveling only goes until the C sensor registers. You can't really ask it to go further than detected, which is a bit weird, because then you can't really calibrate anything at all. So all in all, there were some logical issues with using the C probe. In the end, it kind of works for everything I'm doing, but I had to physically calibrate it. There is also a temperature setting that is called like the inactive extruder temperature. So when 2 extruders are printing, usually one is doing the work and the other one is only resting, being inactive. And you can set the temperature for that resting period. The problem is that right now the firmware doesn't recognize that the temperature is lower when it's supposed to start again. So for example, if this extruder is off resting, and then it's time for that to print again. Maybe that's at 180 degrees and it's supposed to print at 230. It's not going to wait for that. It's going to go directly out and try to, or basically it's going to try to purge at 180 first. And then while it's heating up, it's going into the middle and printing. Luckily, the heaters are really fast and really good in this machine, but it's still like, if you're on the limit, you'll get filament grind because you're trying to purge at too low temperatures. So that's also a really easy fix. In a Cura profile, I would only go in and click the G code and it should be fine. But yeah, still one of those annoying things with the software. To be honest about the software, I really think that it needs some work before it's like finished to be released. But then again, a pre-order Kickstarter machine, what else is to be expected? One thing that I really enjoyed about the software that is like super smart is one of the onboard features. So if you slice a file for a single extruder print, like let's say you want to print PLA rocket with a left nozzle, onboard the machine, when you're starting to print that, you can choose to have that duplicated or mirrored, which is really cool. So basically it takes the model, even if you sliced it in the middle of the machine, it moves that over and makes a copy on the other side. Because you have 2 materials, so why not print both at the same time? And that's what you can do if you click the duplication or the mirror mode, and then it mirrors one of the models. I think that's a really nice feature to have on board the machine. It makes it much easier handling the machine, not having to think about if you're doing a duplication or a mirror model. Alright, so let's back away a little bit from like the dual extrusion and the dual color features, because those are really good hardware-wise. And let's talk about some of the other software features on board the machine. I went through most of these settings in my unboxing and first print video, so if you want to see everything about that, I suggest you check out that video down below. There's chapters in that one as well. So the resume feature seems to work quite well, as well does the brownout detection. I had a tangled filament, I don't know really how I did it, but I probably mishandled the filament spool. And it basically detected that there was no filaments, and it paused the printer, and then I could just resume it when I went down and looked at it. The built-in camera that monitors the print is also, it's decent. It's a nice feature to have, it really is, and you can run it through like an Octoprint viewer. You can connect this machine via Octoprint, but it doesn't seem to be completely configured yet. At least that was what I heard. There is a like webcam streamer software, so you can check out the streamer without using, like connect to the camera without Octoprint, but also only on the computer. So it's a bit weird, but basically in WeBuilder you can connect to the camera, you can check out the print and how it's going. The thing is that it's not really the best angle. You don't really see the first layer, and the resolution could be a little bit better. But it's a nice feature to have, even though it could be better. And as well, navigating the prints is super easy, and yeah, you see all the settings and whatever you want to do before starting to print. The loading of filament is pretty bad considering these are Bowden extruders. You don't get very long distance extruded or retracted when loading and unloading, so you're expected to either repeat the step many times or manually push the filament since there's no jog mode for the extruders. But if you push manually, the C-motors are usually turned off, which means that it's very easy to accidentally move the carriage, meaning that you probably move it asymmetrically, which means that everything is offset and you have to recalibrate it. And that's really annoying. So we talked a little bit about the dual extrusion quality, and if we look at some of these prints, you can see that the color matching, specifically the color matching, is really good. So changing from black to blue, for example, or other colors works really nice. But we have some hiccups in different scenarios. So for example, the more ooze shields and the more prime towers and the more purging you do on each sides and slower print speeds, the better all the dual extrusion are. However, that's not always what you expect. You don't want to use a ooze shield or a prime tower when you have purging and priming outside of the print area with the IDEX system. So still needs maybe some fine tuning, but it works to use it without all of these kind of stuff. And you get clean results. It's not perfect, but they are good. And as well, if we stop looking at the dual extrusion and actually focus on the single extrusion printing, that's really, really good. It's fast, it does everything that you want to, except some things, like vase mode. There's no vase mode in the WeBuilder software, which is a bit weird. I mean, there isn't any revolutionary, but it's just really good. It's what you expect from a machine in this price range. So I'm super happy with the single extruder performance. With the dual extruder performance, I still think it's really good hardware-wise, but again, software. For single extrusion, there is a hint of like C-banding and wobble. I mean, you have two spools on the top. It's a pretty sturdy frame, but still, there is some risk with that. And also, since the bed is moving, you can get some artifacts from that. It's not terrible, it's not more than other printers, but there might be some. I think that the acceleration and some of those fine-tunings could also be better, but that's really starting to pick on minor details. And I think that in an overall software upgrade, it's going to be super nice. However, during printing, the tuning of the print is pretty much terrible. You can only adjust speeds by 50, 100 or 200%, making it impossible to lower the speed just a little bit, or increasing it just a little bit. So you either have to double it or half it, which is really annoying. You can adjust the temperatures with each extruders in the bed, but that's about it. You can't do anything about flow, fan speeds, and nothing else. You can, however, save the print and resume it, swap filaments, but again, that's it. Before we finish off, let's just have a look at a few of the models. This fill is really nice. This is actually wooden and PLA material combined, which is a really nice combo. This is a pretty normal traffic cone, nothing really fancy about that. But this is the exhaust manifold or something similar. I think it looks really cool. It does have a few minor hiccups, but again, as you saw, the print was very complex. It works and all. Even the contact surface you can see around my thumb, it's actually pretty nice considering it's been resting on top of PVA. So that's good, I really enjoy it. This was an attempt, but in this case all the small PVA starts and stops made that it stopped extruding PVA. So it's actually one of the issues with the PVA settings right now, that you can't really make those uniform. This one was also a bit ugly. This is a filament filter with an oiler or a channel for oiler. This is cool again. This is combining two materials, PLA, the green part, and TPU, the soft part. So that's really nice that you can actually combine TPU and PLA. So in this combo, for example, a rubber feet that you can have underneath things. This is really cool, the single extrusion. So this is a wood and bird feet, which I think is pretty cool. And then we have one of the bigger ones. It's a rocket, nothing fancy about that. But there is no vase mode. So this is printed with like manual settings to try to mimic a vase mode. It's still only one shell without infill, and it's really sharp on the tip. I will be printing a lot more, so just follow me on Twitter and Instagram and you'll see a bunch more prints from this machine. To summarize my review of this machine, I would like to first off start with that this is a Kickstarter machine, which means that there are some risks if you want to pre-order it. The Kickstarter is already active and you can read up on all the stretch goals and all like the added features and things that can be added to this machine. And I guess that's just it. This machine has some room for improvements. And I think that if I, for example, or other people from the community or even the manufacturer provides better like material profiles for combinations in a Cura upgrade, for example, I think this is going to be a fantastic machine. It's going to be super nice. It's like you're getting a really expensive machine at a low price without all the profiles and like work of fine-tuning materials. And that's kind of how you can summarize this machine. The hardware is super nice. It's really good. But the software needs some catching up. I think it's important as well to note that this machine is a superb single extruder machine. So, for example, one of the scenarios that you might not even think about is that you could swap all one of the extruders to 0.6, 0.8, and basically if you do 99% single extruder printing, you will have one material or one color loaded in one side, another nozzle diameter and material in the other one. You can swap ABS, PLA, without having to worry about clogging your nozzle and loading in, unloading filament all the time. This machine is a superb single extruder on each on its extruders. So that's a really nice thing to think about if you want to get one of these machines. And I think that it's that promise of like a really good hardware and the opportunities and the different scenarios where you can use it, that's really, really epic. As long as the software catches up. Speaking of epic, make sure that you are going to be an epic viewer and subscribe down below. There's going to be a ton of more videos about this machine, me doing different projects where I need to have dual extrusion. So make sure to subscribe for that and click that little bell down below. And also check out the merch. I got merch now, that's really cool. I made some really nice prints that hopefully you like, and yeah, you can check out that below as well. And down there you can also find the link to the Kickstarter to read up on all the stretch goals, like what people have said, other people's reviews and unboxings and all that. Yeah, with that said, let me know if you have any comments to me. I'll be happy to answer them, so just write them down below or get in touch with me somewhere else. And with that said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.